I have, as always, Mr. Akamaru Red. What's up, Aka? How is it going?
Hello, everyone. It's excited to be here once again. It's been a while since we did this the last time, but I'm glad to be back. I'm glad that we get a chance to see the meta close off as we get the mini expansion, and I can't wait to see something new. I came from Singapore. I saw a lot of the same things. I'm moving for some spice.
Yeah, so here we have this is the team tournament, as you guys should be aware. So this is three players all collaborating on their plays. So we have Team Moof, who's going to be the host team this time. We have Teams Are Cool being the guest today.
And I think the teams are cool for some context. They're the disaster members. We see Autoaim there being their captain, and I believe they have Ludi Brolo, which is another very strong European player. I recognize him from a lot of SEOs, as you should as well as Balayan. Balayan is from the PAM side. He's been a bit shy on the scene. I haven't seen his name, but definitely recognize him from previous season.
So in just a couple minutes, we should be getting into these games. We just need to make sure that the players do know that they're allowed to start the game.
And unfortunately, from the teams are cool. They came to win this tournament. They came to try hard, let's say. So they're having a very standard, very strong lineup. Agro Forest, the usual list, with the exception of having that one-off Ariana. We can see if it's going to be something interesting or not. And then we have the Aven, which is a Summit Temple even. We don't see the Tenko anymore. I think that people adapted from the Singapore meta. It was so popular, and there's some interesting new classes that can attack that Tenko deck.
Yeah, both teams rather, decided to ban out the Havens because I guess they just didn't want to deal with that. That's going to leave them with a pretty interesting matchup, I believe.
Yeah, and I think that it's... Are you surprised from seeing Haven ban? I mean, we talked a lot about Haven in Shadowcast. We all know Haven has a lot of good stuff going on. I think that they're here to win, and they won't let that deck pass.
I know me personally, whenever I play in a tournament, I tend to ban Havens. They do so much good stuff, and they do a lot of things that are just really hard to deal with. So I'd rather just ban it and worry about different matchups.
Yeah, it's weird that this control slow style deck is also able to have the strongest Storm follower in the game in the form of Heavenly Knight. The fact that I don't know where you can just lose. We saw some giant chimeras, which are very slow, very methodical decks that prey on slow decks and healing decks in other card games, but it's not the case because all of a sudden that healing deck gets a Genesis Dragon turn 7 or turn 8, and you're like, oh wow, what can I do now? And it's too late.
Yeah, so speaking of Giant Chimera, Team Moof actually brought Giant Chimera as well. Lately, there's been a bit of an uprise in Abyss Summoner rune. Why do you think Team Moof decided to go with Giant Chimera today instead of Abyss Summoner?
Yeah, Abyss Summoner was an interesting phenomenon. In metas, sometimes there's a deck that pops off all of a sudden, just populates the entire meta, and then it doesn't see tournament play. I've talked to some players on Singapore. They told me that they weren't prepared to play Abyss Summoner, and now it just disappeared on the map. I haven't seen an Abyss Summoner being played in like a week, I think. So this is I have to interrupt you here a bit because this is a Koro Forest list. Team Moof is playing the Koro slow style of Forest, and teams are cool. I guess Team Autoaim are playing the aggro style. So I, from personal experience, more comfortable playing the Koro side.
They're able to fall back on the white Venaras. I think a big part of this matchup is if the Cassiopeias are able to come down in time, and if there aren't elf songs from Teams Are Cool. If the elf songs don't come down on the right turns, that could end up being pretty bad.
Yeah, also a very important card in the matchup is Leafman. If they are able to have access to that card in crucial turns, it'll be very strong in stopping those Cassiopeias and even Matera. Sometimes Leafman on turn 5 will stop that first Evo for Team.
We even have a Shamu and Shama from Team Moof. So how do you feel about this card in the matchup?
I think they wanted to have some healing options. With the rotation of Aaron, we saw Forest lose a couple of control, slow healing options. So I think it's their way of saying we don't have Aaron anymore, but we definitely want the heal. Because with the addition of Axemans to the Agroforest list, they have a lot of staying power. They can actually take games to turn 11, 12, and win then.
I like how teams are cool there decided to actually take some time before they passed so that they don't just give away the information that they don't have a 1-drop.
Yeah, this is the cool thing about this format. For those of you that are watching, our players are actually together and talking and speculating about plays. So you'll see a lot of play, a lot of methodical play, and you might see an out of the box play that is actually fantastic. We've seen that in the previous tournaments where there were players calculating their Barbarossa's turn, or actually the Sword Mirrors, where they passed for like 2 or 3 turns in a row, if I remember correctly, to try and play around that Gawain. Something that is not obvious to you, but when you have 3 players together, one of them will, hey guys, what if we pass here? And they're like, wait, that's actually not bad. That's kind of smart. So you'll see extremely quality games, I feel.
This ends up being one of my favorite formats to watch. So
this a complicated turn. This is not where you want to be. Obviously, going second as the aggressive deck, you also don't have a lot of comeback options in terms of Insect Lord or Metera. So it's going to be interesting to see how they pilot this game.
Going with the Falconer just to give themselves a 3-drop, they might not even end up playing it on 3, but it is the card that doesn't die immediately to the board.
They'll probably trying to set up that Elf Song. As you mentioned before, it's one of the most important cards in this matchup. It's not going to be easy though, because as we see here, Team Moof is having the Brambles set up for turn 4.
Yeah, Bramble's another card that's incredibly important. Possibly more important than having Elf Song in the matchup. But that's a Metera, and that's going to help Teams Are Cool come back into this game next turn.
And as you predicted, this is one of the easiest ways to help stabilize the board. The 2-1, obviously you don't want to use it for trading potential, but playing Elf Whisper here, it just does not feel good when you know your opponent has a Bramble.
So this isn't the cleanest turn. The Shamu and Shama doesn't fit the board too well, but the Brambles actually does. And you have plenty of Airbound Barrages to keep that going for a while.
And this is one of the strongest turns to play a Brambles is actually turn 4. Personal experience, especially on the play, it's very frustrating to evolve into it, knowing that your opponent will have their own Evo, so they're basically gaining extra stats on that Bramble. This is an interesting one. They have that Metera, but Metera usually is better used when you can kill something like a Korwa or a Vanara, something with a little bit more health. So they might choose to go for the Insect Lord instead, although they don't have much to follow up with.
If you go Metera and you top deck a 1-drop for next turn, you'll be able to turn on your Rain, as you might be able to go 1-drop, Insect Lord plus Rain, and that could help you come back the turn after. So we might see Metera come down just to try to draw some cards and find that.
They're slowly and steadily regaining a bit of control. As we see from Team Moof, they don't have a lot of proactive plays. This is one of the hard parts of playing this style of deck, is that once you are ahead, you can't really step on the pedal, on the gas, and push it forward.
So Leafman coming down now, I think that's a little interesting.
Why do you think they chose that?
I think that was just the follower that they felt most comfortable playing. If you play the Whisper, it does die to the Brambles.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The Lord will still die to the Brambles, and there still is an Airbound Barrage to scoop everything back up.
Yeah, but it's interesting that they chose not to go for the Metera. I think they realized that since they're playing against a Korwa, maybe they were expecting a Korwa this turn, or they think that Metera will be valuable later on the game. And as I mentioned before, this slow style of deck, without Elf Song, we mentioned that card a lot, it doesn't really have proactive options. It's basically like a control style of deck. And I think that is not one of the best ways to deal with aggro, because as I mentioned before, the Axeman and Fairy Driver are actually very scary cards if you give them infinite amount of time.
Yeah, if you give that deck time to draw the cards that it needs to close out a game, it's going to have the damage eventually.
And they immediately slammed that rain. They knew this play. They thought about this play the previous turn. That's why they went for the Leaf Man. They knew exactly what they wanted to do this turn. This is a very clean way to deal with the Brambles. Unfortunately for them, they still don't see the Korwa. I think the teams are cool. Actually, would like to see a Korwa because that Matera is just waiting there to regain all that tempo.
Yeah, and this might be, we might see them go Airbound Barrage and then Korwa this turn. So that might finally give Teams Are Cool the payoff for holding on to that Matera.
Yeah, might be a bait. On the other hand, it does the fact that they have Brambles, access to Brambles and Barrage, means that they'll be able to hold onto those Evos for so long. And this Fairy Dragon might do a lot of work. Fairy Dragon was one of my favorite cards to be playing at the moment. The fact that it just blocks Fairy Driver so well is extremely, extremely important to be very, very smart with it. And I believe that 3 players on a team, they will know exactly the correct turn to play it.
Right, and they're going to go and get the Shamu's Antics. That'll help them heal up just a little bit. And they're finally getting a little bit of something going on this board. They keep a 4-5 up and a 1-1. That might bait out this Matera here.
I think it's one of the best targets at the moment, yeah. Because you didn't see a Korwa on 5, and this deck doesn't run a lot of mid-game. Their biggest body is actually the Korwa and the Vanaras, so the 4-5 is actually the biggest thing they'll see in this game, unless they evolve a Korwa, which I highly doubt. Korwa, they set themselves up to play it on 8, so for now they'll try to go for some Shamas, and it's very good. That removal spell will be very handy here.
Team Moof is looking like they're in a very commanding position at the moment. Right now, Teams Are Cool doesn't really have too much going on in their hand. Last turn, they were really hoping to draw something like a 2-drop, and they did get a 2-drop, but unfortunately, it was an Elf Song, a little bit of a more awkward 2-drop.
And this is the awkward part when you play a very proactive, very aggressive deck. Once you go second and you're out of Evos, you don't have ways to stabilize and come back. So if Team Moof is able to get a strong body on the board, like just a strong Fairy Dragon, is enough to sometimes stop them from even reaching their more important targets like Yggdrasil or Korwa or even Vanara. They're so big bodies and there's no ways to deal with it.
Do you think we might see the Korwa come down now?
No, if you don't Korwa on 5, you definitely want to Korwa on 8, because essentially, if you don't, you're losing 2 turns on fills, and that'll mean that you'll only have enough to lethal on turn 12. I don't think you want to set yourself to turn 12. If you Korwa on 8, it's like you Korwa on 5 without losing that much tempo.
It seems like they agree with you, and they're just going to go and grab another Shamu's Antics, and they're going to evolve again, too. Just keep in a commanding position on this board.
Not a big fan of this Fairy Dragon, but considering the options, I think they had to go for it, because you expect an Axeman in this situation, and that Fairy Dragon just doesn't feel very good when it just suicides to the Axeman.
You know, your 2-drop trading for their 7-drop could be worse. You could be getting a worse deal.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, well, the Axeman would probably suicide anyways, right? Most of the times they use it for slowing down the game. So this was a very clean turn, very strong. I think Fairy Dragon is mostly used to stop Fairy Driver, and if they counted the fairies of their opponent, they would know there were no fairies. So I would try to hold on to the Fairy Dragon. But again, they didn't have a lot of options on their hand, to be fair.
So now here, we might be seeing that Korwa turn. Korwa plus Shamu's Antics will be able to clear off the Insect Lord if they think that's dangerous enough.
And the fact that they play the Fairy Dragon instead of the Shamus, maybe Shamus would be a better option and hold on to their Evos, because their Evos are very important. They end up evolving 2 Shamas this game, and you usually want to evolve Materas or Rains.
Yeah, or even just evolving your Yggdrasil just to gain some more HP if you want to go that route.
Choosing to ignore the sport, that's very interesting. There were no elf songs played. We obviously know there's elf songs in hand, but I mean, you have to expect your opponent has skipped turn 5 and 6. They didn't have a lot of powerful options there, so you have to expect them to have some sort of awkward hand, possibly a Fairy Driver, or maybe Axeman. They would probably play it last turn, although the Insect Lord play was very clean, so maybe they still have the Axeman.
Yeah, this is even setting up for what might be a very big push of damage. If you go Fairy Driver plus double Fairy and the Elf Song, and maybe you top deck another Fairy Driver to push out tons of damage over the course of the next couple turns.
I agree. I think that this is very strong even against possible Cassiopeia. She's only dealing 7 damage. But I also agree that barraging that Insect Lord with an Elf Song just feels very strong.
But unfortunately, the Elf Song, you will be able to clear up the board, and you'll be able to take control of it. But you won't be able to start pushing any damage quite yet.
This also overextends a bit into the Cassiopeia that we know they run as a 3-off. But fortunately for Teams Are Cool, they haven't seen it yet.
Unless, no.
Seen.
Close.
This is the part of their deck that I'm not a big fan of. As you see here, they have 3 different win conditions. They have Fairy Dragons with Yggdrasils, they have Venaras with Korras, and sometimes your deck just doesn't work very well because you have all these 3 different options, but you just don't see them all that often, right? You don't see Fairy Dragon with Yggdrasil a lot of times. You don't have time to establish the Wrath of Nature aggressive matchup, so this is, I'm kind of curious to see what they're going to use. I assume they're going to give it Rush, yeah.
And just give it a little bit more HP too.
It's a very strong target, hard to deal with.
If they waited a little bit longer on that, they could have attacked with that Yggdrasil twice too. But this is very big. They need to do something to deal with this 3/7 drain. Otherwise, it's just going to keep gaining HP.
And the problem is that it also will be able to attack twice, because if you ignore it and completely face, they will be able to double attack. So I assume they'll get a trade, kill that off, and get a big Elf Song. Yeah, this is a very clean turn. They'll be able to. Interesting. They did an Elf Song.
Very, very strange the way they decided to order that.
Yeah, if they Elf Song that Fairy, they would be able to get an extra body this turn. They could have Elf Song that Fairy, trade into it, and then play another Fairy with a 2/1, and then play yet another Fairy. So they would have an extra body on. But they chose to go for the Water Fairy instead.
So we finally have the Cassiopeia here, but like I was saying, Elf Song is a very good way to block a Cassiopeia, and we see that happening exactly here, where Cassiopeia is just not coming down in time to actually deal with what's going on the board.
At this point, I would not be surprised to see a Venara double attack, actually. Killing 2 bodies with the Venara is exactly what you... They could even clear the Water Fairy with the Shamus and set up a stronger Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia just doesn't feel good here. Your Venara would be able to deal with 7 health, meaning that the next turn Cassiopeia is a lot stronger.
Yeah, the Venara will definitely be able to take care of a lot of the threat on the board. And you know your opponent just popped an Elf Song. You know those 2 cards in the hand are a Fairy.
Yeah, sometimes you don't even need to go for that 10 damage on. Sometimes against aggro decks, you just need to outlast them. Just sometimes Matera sticking is enough to kill them. And it seems to be what they're going for. I wonder if they'll go face. Could also go face. I mean, that word is still strong, but knowing that they have 3 fairies, I wouldn't be surprised if they chose to trade.
You'll probably be able to find that damage. The 5 damage I don't think will be that important over the next couple turns. But what a Brambles, that's a pretty strong card to have here, though it doesn't line up too well against this Cassiopeia.
Yeah, they definitely wanted to see some sort of action, even another Fairy Driver or Axeman, something that would allow them to get that extra damage.
Yeah, and deciding to hold on to that extra Fairy, no real reason to play it quite yet.
Well, this is where the 3 Matera sometimes gets awkward, and bear in mind, they not only went first, but they chose to evolve those Shamans, and now we see that Materas are kind of awkward, but then again, they seem to stabilize, and now, as I mentioned before, this body can actually go and finish the game.
Yeah, these Materas are probably going to be good enough. They'll draw some more cards if they're in the market for looking for more cards, or they'll just be able to push for quite a bit of damage going for 4 each hit.
And unfortunately for Teams Are Cool, they're now getting their Brambles, access to their Brambles. They didn't have that early game. They certainly wish they had it earlier on the game, but sometimes it's how you get dealt. The cards are sometimes in that order, and you just need to adapt and try your best. And I think they definitely think they did very, very well in this game.
So nothing but card draw in the hand, but I think that's all you really need.
Yeah, the fills. This is where fills become extremely insane. I'm actually surprised they chose to go for Singer first. I would have filled my Matera and see the options first, perhaps. But this is where it just gets crazy, right? You just everybody you manage to stick just deals insane amounts of damage. They have at this moment 14 damage, so that's why sometimes you don't need the Venara. Just taking a Matera or a Cassiopeia is 6 damage by themselves. Would actually
Surprised?
not be surprised if they went face with it.
Surprised they didn't try to clear the board first a little bit. Draw some cards with the Matera, maybe.
Yeah, I like this. They know they have 3 fairies. They know their opponents cannot have enough damage to finish them off, so I respect this. Forcing an aggro deck to trade into you is not where they want to be, so it's a very strong play.
And that's Green Glen, but Green Glen is not going to be enough anymore.
Let's see. Is there a way for them to kill 3 bodies? There is. There is actually no way for them to kill 3 bodies, unfortunately. So that I believe that will be game, because they'll be able to double fill their 1-drops, meaning that 1 attack followers, meaning that 1 attack followers sometimes are just what you need.
They did have a way to clear 3 bodies, but they would have left the Matera up, and that was
Or
not
Cassiopeia.
quite what they wanted
Yeah.
to do.
Exactly. And Team Moof will be able. They'll be able to take the first game, and it's one of those matchups where it's very hard to play aggressively without the efficient cards like the Elf Song. You really need those to pop up on 5. Need to put pressure onto the slower player, not allow them enough time to, stabilize. And because cards like Yggdrasil and Korwa obviously take a lot of time to gain that value.
Yeah, without having a really opportune Elf Song to get off, or anything like a Wood of Brambles, they kind of just lost the board and fell behind in the early game. That's not where you want to be.
Even though they managed to do very interesting plays with their Insect Lords, they squeezed the most amount of the value they could. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough.
Showing the Korwa because why not? Hey, look at all these other fills we had.
Fill you to death. Ha!
Insect Lord has a really cool animation when you do it twice. It's like it shoots double lasers.
I never understood why it shoots lasers.
I don't know. I think when you actually play him, it's supposed to look like a swarm of insects attacking whatever.
Yeah, like a cloud of grasshoppers or something like that, because he's the lord of the insects. But shooting it's like Bahamut, right? Bahamut also used to shoot lasers. I was also very confused at that.
Well, I think for Bahamut, it's a very focused fire breath. But for Insect Lord, I don't think it's a very focused insect breath. That seems a little weird.
Insect breath. I feel that like that's a Pokemon move. There has to be something like that. Insect breath.
I don't think anything quite like that.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about this runecraft? Do you think you're pretty comfortable walking into this, going against Puppet Portal and Agroforest with Giant Chimera?
More comfortable against the Puppet Portal. Against the Agroforest, it's kind of scary. If they don't have the Elf Song turn, you're probably very far ahead. If they do, it's actually very hard to come back. Something interesting that I found in this matchup is that if you're the root player and you actually go second, you're most likely to get a good Nova Flare, because their first 4 turns, they have very small bodies, and they won't be able to evolve first. One of the most frustrating things that I had to deal with when I played Chimera was to deal with that 2/2, that 4/4 evolve fall, or even the 3/3 fairy, because I couldn't kill it.
So, would you say, as the Giant Chimera, the important cards you're looking for, or not necessarily looking for, but the cards that you want to get over the next couple turns, would be something like your Abomination Awakens or your Nova Flares?
Yeah, it depends on, obviously, if you go second. If you go second, actually keeping a Rooney and an A-bomb is a very strong, solid plan, because you guarantee that on turn 5 you're gonna proc that A-bomb. If you're going first, obviously the Nova Flare is option, you want to play Nova Flare as fast as you can, because those elf songs will just stop that Nova Flare from being effective.
So we have Insight here, but Insight's only going to be spell boosting one card. Do you think it's worth playing it just to find something new?
Since you have a turn 2 play already, I would abstain from playing Insight. Usually you want to filter cantrip your deck if you don't have the options, but they already have so many strong options, right?
Yeah, they do have the Golem Assault. Golem Assault will also give them that Guardian Golem, obviously, which is pretty good in the early game against Forest, for the most part.
If they were running Seraphic Blade, I guess it could be a choice to look for it, but since they don't have, their 2-drops are Wind Blasts and Magic Missile, and in this Magic Missile isn't that effective because they always have the option of having a Goblin, right? So it's sometimes not effective.
Well, they did decide to go and play that Insight, and teams are cool getting right off the top their Water Fairy. That's something like a Water Fairy, or even a Goblin would have been nice too, because Goblin also plays around the Magic Missile.
And now they have the information that they don't have the Magic Missile. I was going to say that since they have the information there's no Magic Missile, why not play the Insect Lord? It's not going to do much in this matchup, so it's just a 2 mana 1/1. Sometimes it's what you got to do.
This isn't exactly the hand you want as teams are cool against something like Giant Chimera. It's very slow, very reactive, and against this deck you usually want to be more proactive.
One of the best cards in this matchup is actually Elf Whisperer. It just activates your Elf Song very well. On imagine they had it here, right? They would have saved those 2 fairies, been able to play Fairy Elf Song, maybe even pre-evo. Unfortunately, they had to go for the Rain, and it just walks really good into that Nova Flare.
Yeah, this is a really nice Nova Flare. Picking up 2 pretty valuable 2-drops and a Water Fairy for your troubles.
And as I mentioned before, when you go first, if you have a chance to play the Nova Flare, you have to. Otherwise, their followers they will just get out of that 2 health threshold by evolving.
Yeah, if there was something like a Goblin off the top there, you could have seen something like Goblin, Elf Song plus an Evo, and then you're taking a lot of damage, and you're going to be continuing to take damage over the next couple turns.
I think they'll choose to go for the Evo on the Owl and the Zero Blade. I might have held my Evo here instead. Even though like you're spell boosting twice, not using an Evo as an removal effect when you play Chimera versus Forest can be very dangerous, because you can get into a situation where you're 1-for-1 with your fairies. It's just not good enough.
Though this is kind of alright because you do get that Absolute Zero Blade. It'll draw you another card. You don't always get to get that effect off of the Absolute Zero Blade.
Also gets that Fate Sand, obviously, which makes them so that they can spell boost more and activate their A-bombs. They're very well set this game.
Too. They have Arula Maya. If they so choose to go for that, they can wipe the board at any given moment with their Abomination Awakens. They got to be feeling pretty good here.
And unfortunately for Teams Are Cool, they also found their 2 barrages in a matchup where it's not very strong.
Yeah, and their Insect Lord, which is not exactly what you want to have here either. This is a pretty sad-looking fairy. At least it's going to survive, but when it survives, that's just giving your Runecraft opponent more targets for their spells.
Yeah, and I would not be surprised if they even went for Maya. Exactly. Like, you have so much freedom, so much space to deploy this 5/5, and it's gonna spell boost 3 times until your Chimera comes. So it's very effective. It's like you're evolving, actually 4 times. It's like you're mega evolving your Owl.
Yeah, it's gonna be putting in work over the course of this game.
It's just now spell boosted twice, and now it'll spell boost 2 more times until turn 9. So it's gonna be very strong. So if you were the aggro for there, what cards would you think would be the comeback? What cards do you think would help for you to be able to win this game?
Things like your Fairy Driver and your Green Glen Axeman, and even those, it's looking a little sketchy.
Yeah, I was thinking, if we get Axeman next turn and answer this A-bomb, it's actually not bad. If you get Axeman into the Fairy Driver, you might be able to Elf Song and might get enough damage if you get a couple of Fairy Drivers. Like, Rune from turns 6 to 8, they tend to be very slow. But again, if you don't get those Axemans, obviously, and those fairy drivers, it's gonna be rough.
Yeah, here you're just you really do need that Axeman like off the top right now. And even if you get that Axeman, you also need your opponent to just not have the Chimera, so that you have the time to actually get those Axeman procs in.
And I believe realizing that this Conjure Golem is very precise and very well played. It stops that Axeman from killing the A-bomb, so the A-bomb will be free to go face or pick a trade. So really like that. They held that card for so long, and now they found a really nice spot to play it.
Yeah, they had a pretty good opportunity to play it 2 turns ago, and they decided to hold on to it. So that was a pretty heads-up decision on their end. Fairy Whisper. This evolve is just going to evolve just so you don't die with evolves.
Yeah, exactly. It's also, we have 2 evolves. Might as well. Next turn is Chimera. Hope we get enough damage, but it's going to be difficult. There's a hand. Their hand is full of riches. They have a lot of options. They got that missile. They're going to be able to double Flame Destroyer, if I'm not mistaken, because they have the Fire Embraces. If they so choose to, they might not go for that. Yeah, I think I would go for the double Flame Destroyer. Like, it's so strong, right? You just set up so many stats that your aggro forest player just can't deal with.
Yeah, there's no real way in their deck to actually deal with 2 Flame Destroyers, but I guess there's no real. You don't have to. You know that your opponent's hand is a lot of fairies, and you know this is open deck list. You know there isn't really anything too impactful that can be drawn that can actually get them out of the situation.
This card was as good as it could get. Axeman wouldn't be as effective here. They'll be able to kill the Flame Destroyer, but again, we know there's 2 Chimeras there, so it's going to be difficult.
They even do get to proc their Ivy Spell Bomb.
And I assume they'll pass here. There's no reason to trade there. You're essentially doing your opponent a favor by doing that.
And double Fiery Embrace plus Giant Chimera will probably close this one out. I don't know quite how
7
big that
damage
is, but it's pretty big.
Having evolved an Owl and then a Maya, it's at least 6 damage just on those 2 cards, so it's
20.
Enough.
More than enough. I'm a little disappointed that Team Moof didn't decide to play the Flame Destroyer there, but that's not going to matter. Team Moof is going to get this win. They're going to be moving into the finals.
Grand finals, and I'm always a fan of Korra. Seeing Korra perform so well, and Chimera too. These are 2 decks that have not been seen throughout the meta a lot, but they're starting to surface a bit now, starting to pop up a bit. We saw Singapore Chimera winning the whole tournament. Now we start to see Korra, so maybe we'll see it more on the weekend. I wish.